will be facilitated by an easy agenda. The agenda has one item on it, and that is discuss the 22-23 budget and potentially take action on it. I am going to say right up front that with all the new members, and in fact with myself being a return member, I think I would like to see the board members have a bit more time with the budget to review it, make sure they understand it after they receive answers to the questions that were asked already, almost like a second reading before we vote on this. So, you know, I plan to ask later that we table the vote on this to the next meeting, business meeting on the 18th. And we can add that to the agenda and vote on that later, but I want to see how far we get first, and if everyone feels that all their questions are answered, or whether anybody feels that they could use some more time after hearing the superintendent's responses to our questions and having some open discussion. With that said, I would like to invite Dr. Cook to go ahead and open up with a Q&A based on the questions that were sent in by board members to date. Thank you. Great.
Chairman Klaskin, and as you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we were kind of working between two meetings to start. So thank you for attending that meeting with myself. I know some other board members were on as well. I'm pleased to report, I know it's not on the agenda, but I'm pleased to report that it was unanimously approved to move the question to a referendum for February 15th. So we're very pleased about the school renewal plan moving forward. And thank you to all the board members for all the work and getting us this far, and administration team. I know they're online as well, and they've just done a tremendous amount of work. So thank you. Earlier today, actually over the weekend and yesterday and today, we received questions from some board members, which we reduced to writing, and wanted to share those with all board members. For the board members that are virtual, we've emailed them to you just a few minutes ago. We were working on that pretty much up to this afternoon. Some questions came in as recently as today, but we wanted to reply to those in writing. If I can, Chairman Klass, can just go through those quickly. There's, I think there are 8 total with some with several parts. I'm not going to read the answers. Certainly the board members have those and can review that, and 9 actually, and certainly if there's any follow-up, we'll be ready for that either tonight or after, but I just want to kind of highlight some of the pieces of that. There's a question on school choice account of $76,000, recent history, and what schools do Madison Public Schools students attend. Gale Valley Edge provided some information there in terms of the schools that attend, and the number for 76,000 has been flat for several years. So we're fortunate in that respect that our magnet costs have not been going up, but there are some cost detail there for you. The second question was on an 11th course stipend. So for new board members, I'll explain a little bit about what that is. Teachers at the high school teach 10 courses throughout the course of the 3 trimesters. So they teach 3 one trimester, 3 another trimester, and 4 one trimester for the total of 10. There are times where we need to utilize one of the staff members in an 11th course. And so they give up their duty period, which is some of them enjoy that, and then they teach another course that allows us to offer more courses to students. We try not to do that too often because we feel, the schedule is what it is. But where I have seen it come in really handy is if a staff member's out and there's only, say, 2 staff members in the whole building that teach a certain course, one staff member might pick up that class and for sometimes a limited amount of time, sometimes a full trimester. But that's the compensation that we base that off of. And on the budget, we have 4 stipends budgeted each year, and some years they're used and some years they're not fully used. It's really dependent on student enrollment and courses signed up for. Extracurricular, there's questions of how that's broken down there in the different areas. And so they, Heather and Stacy provided us the budget codes as you see there. And I just wanted to point out that there's an increase in extracurriculars this year due to the change in the teacher's contract. So the teacher's contract we eliminated for next year, step one. So that pushed that amount up and is giving a well-due raise to the coordinators, teachers, coaches that do that. And so that's why that account might be going up more than board members have seen in other years. There's a question on the AP support proposal, how many teachers anticipated, indication of their support for additional hours, and then some questions about the pilot. Of course, anything that we do additional is dependent on teachers, being willing to do that. As we've shared with the board last year, we looked at summer options and things like that. It has been difficult to staff because of, it's been a long couple of years, and so teachers, oftentimes get to June and they're ready, or they may not, want the value in time off more so than additional compensation. This is more tied to the school year, and so I know Mr. Solitari's had some conversation with leaders at the high school and teachers, and it seems to be some real interest in that, but we can't control that on a year-by-year basis. But I do think we're excited by the interest that we've seen so far. There is 2 pilots running out of basically accounts at the high school that there's positions that we hadn't filled, extra positions and support. So it's not going to be too costly, the 2 pilots. But as you can see in Latin, 9 students were offered, and we anticipate 5 students joining that. For chemistry, 24 students were offered, and 23 students will participate. Again, as well, students, same story. It is voluntary, so you could have students join, you could have students drop during it, and that's all dependent on how busy our students are, and we know they're very busy. But early indications are they're valuing the opportunity. Very lengthy answer again from Gail about the professional development math that will be offered for the rest of the academic year and summer, and a little bit more about the math coaches. Number 6 is some information about the additional $50,000 for plan and cycle maintenance and where that's targeted. I had some conversations with additional conversations with Bill McMinn. He provided a memo to the board early on in the budget process to detail that. And as I mentioned, we were targeting the Folsom Hallway project for next year, but each year there's additional projects that are not part of CIP that we would do. Our costs are increasing, as I mentioned before. Some of the smaller projects aren't quite as bad, but anything on the larger end of a project, Mr. McMahon's reporting a 10 to 20% increase in cost. I think that's consistent with what homeowners would report or what we've seen in other projects that we bid. A 5-year history of the account shows the last 4 years we have not increased, but from 2017, 2018 to 2018, 2019, they did increase 50,000. So we're just trying to keep up with needs and rising costs as well. There was a question number 7 on more information for Daniel Hand High School Advisory Co-Coordinators. So the high school has provided us with a job description on that, and also plans and even some student presentations and information that you can access through the online copy that I sent to you just recently. That question number 8 was a question about a miscellaneous account that appeared in the first document that was provided to the board back in, I believe it was early December, and just shows that $8,000 made up of increase in homebound tutoring, and an increase in the cost of the shared financial audit that we do with the town of Madison, and some small contractual increases elsewhere as well. And then finally, the last question was the curriculum lab and the calculations. And so board members that were here when we settled the teacher's contract, will remember we did increase the cost within the contract by $2 an hour. So we expected to have to increase this, to just keep up with that. But also we held off on a lot of curriculum projects over the last 2 years and really need to catch up on those. So the $110,000 account is proposed to have a $40,000 increase in there. And there's some information provided about how we came to those calculations and what is planned within that answer to number 9. That was the questions we received online, over email over the last couple days. We're ready to answer any follow-up on that, or also address any new questions. I have most of my administrative team available to promote and answer any questions that we might need them, and as well, Stacy Novitz, our financial director, is with us, and I asked her to join remotely because she's able to share documents with the board, on the screen by doing so. Back to you, Carolyn.
I thought that maybe we could start with relying very heavily on Stacy and perhaps look at the numbers and have her go through the ones that are essentially a contractual increase, something that we, pretty much have to put in the new budget, and then that would sort of narrow it down to the things that we need to discuss versus the things that do not require discussion. Sound like a plan? Can they hear us? Hello?
Yep, so I'm good with that. If everybody else is, I can share a document that shows you basically what the increase makes up, including budget assumptions, as well as excluding them. So I'll share that if everyone's good with that plan.
Please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna shut off my camera because I'm looking at my other screen and you're gonna see the side of my face. So. Okay, can everybody see this?
Can you make it bigger? Because I can't.
Yes, I can. Is that better?
Is there,
Okay.
we have a sheet that's the same thing that we're looking at, the total out here?
I think it's the same one that we had the December 14th
Yeah.
meeting.
So this was modified a little bit from the finance committee meeting that we had back a while ago. Am I echoing?
Well, I can't really see the whole document. Right.
Well, I'm gonna scroll down. Just gonna,
I don't think it's gonna go any further. The cortisol.
can you guys see me scrolling down? Is that good?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and am I echoing?
No, you're good.
Not anymore.
Okay, okay. So basically what this does is it lists what the increase is made of. And so I pulled out all of the major components, and in this column C includes absolutely everything. So when we go down this column, you'll see that we eventually come up with the 1.72 recommended budget from the administration. Then what I did is I did a separate column over in H, which is pretty much rolling everything over, things that we have no control over. So this column includes no additional budget requests, includes no budget assumptions. It does include, however, this one reduction that we talked about for the 5 paras that we were going to reduce. So the budget that was presented to you includes or equates 0.72%. If we just rolled things over but included those para reductions, it would come to 1.17%.
Can you scroll back to the top for a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The original sheet that we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, I show personnel, salaries, contractual, and that's 780, 728, but you're showing 855, 926. Yeah.
So yeah, so last week when we talked about the budget document that was provided to you before the holiday, things were modified because this original discussion that we had at the finance committee level was based on revised budget to requested budget. I modified this document to compare it to the approved budget versus the requested budget. So we do line transfers that you all approved during the year, and that was the original document that you saw. But this document that you're seeing tonight is based on the approved budget that was actually voted on and what we were originally working with for this current fiscal year. So I would focus more on these numbers, because I think that made more sense to discuss with the full board, and that's what we based the budget document on that you received before the holidays.
Slightly different than I see. So the reduction in force, that's the same. And new grant funding for the special assignment paras, that's the same. And then I see the early retirement, that's a different number.
Yeah, again, I think this is Diane, I think. Originally, when we showed you all at the finance committee, we based it on revised budget. So, and I know I'm getting very technical, but we did some line transfers during the year so that early retirement, for example, did change a little bit with a budget transfer that was approved from July 1st until December. But this current document is based on the approved budget that was done last year, that we started the year off. So just kind of a reallocation, because we do line item transfers throughout the year that you all approve. But this is based on the original budget that was approved last year. So you will see the numbers are off a little bit from the original finance committee discussion. But I thought this was more, and this was more what we aligned in the past, what we have presented to you all in the past.
This new document that you have and not by the one that you have printed out, is that correct?
This new document is what we talked about last week. I did not provide this official, like this schedule, but in your green book, your budget document, that is based off of the approved budget. And we did talk about this last week.
I guess I'm looking for like the exact same sheet and it's not exact, so.
No, because like I said, we reallocated, just like last week, we talked about the health insurance and how we took advantage of some of the RIFs in the health insurance, which we don't normally do. So that number will be revised. So if I scroll down, this health insurance number is now 200,000 because we took advantage of some savings in employees that will no longer be with us, or positions that will no longer be with us. We took advantage of that. And so what I did is then reallocated the numbers to still come down to the same total, but this would be a revisement of this sheet only. I mean, this is a working document and this is what we use internally, and that's what we talked with the finance committee about. But when we did the actual budget document, it's based off of approved budget. So that's why I had modified this to base it off of the approved budget.
So can I ask you a question, since we're talking about like the line item transfers and like moving money around? So last year, right, we had funded those 10 positions over the past year that remained open. And so that's why now we're reducing the 5 special assignment paras. And that's where that reduction comes in. So my question is, the money that actually funded the 10 positions last year, was that all reallocated?
I don't specifically remember what we did with that.
It hasn't been yet. So we're still actively for most of those trying to fill the positions. They're open right now. So it's half a year basically that they've been open in some form or fashion. And so one example I'll give you was over break or just before break, Jeffrey was able to hire a paraprofessional, and the high school lost a paraprofessional over break or just before break. So it kind of shifts, but it's been pretty much 10 all year. So there will be savings, throughout this year.
So then at the end of the year, if there are positions that are still open, that money that was allocated for that will be reallocated to something else?
Correct. And typically what would happen is we'd go into the summer and try and fill any open positions. Most years we might end up with a position or two that's open at the end of the year. We try and fill that over the summer. This, I think we're just recognizing is a change in the way we have to look at things, because we don't see it changing that dramatically, by September in terms of the job market.
For the benefit of my poor memory and maybe new board members, what's the regulation for returning money, if any, at the end of a year, budget year?
We have to return any funds that are unspent so we can line item transfer at our discretion. Nobody has to approve it other than you all, but any leftover balances do need to be returned to the town at the end of the year. Yes, we can go back and ask them to put funds aside in a reserve fund or to CIP. We've done that in the past. We have our special ed reserve fund, but there's a process that we have to ask the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance to do.
Stacy, what's our current balance in the special ed reserve fund?
I don't know it offhand, Seth, but I will look it up.
Yeah, if you're able to. If not, I
Yeah.
understand you don't. I know we used to try to keep it funded at like $250,000 because there could, one placement could be $120,000, including transportation, or even more with transportation. So we've tried to use that in the past to insulate the board and the district against over expenditure that would need to go to a special appropriation town meeting to cover an unanticipated transfer in of a student who needs outplacement, for example.
Yeah, the current balance, Seth, is 350,000.
Okay, so we're pretty good there. That's good.
Yep.
And typically we've returned money to the town, and that's a good faith thing. But at the same time, if there are things that we need to spend on, especially considering pandemic considerations or something like that, then we might want to, at the end of the year, consider asking the board for either doing some line item transfers that are within our right, or asking the boards of selectmen and finance for dispensation to create a fund.
Can you scroll up down, Stacy? I'm sorry. Or is it down? Up, down?
I'm not sure if somebody's talking in the room, but I couldn't hear it.
Oh, can you just scroll so we can see more of the sheet? Oh, you can't see my motion either.
I still can't hear you. I think I heard the word.
Yep, could you scroll so that we can see the bottom half of the sheet?
Yep.
Thank you.
So Stacy, can I ask, just to kind of get back to what Diane's questions were initially, column C, by using the initial budget and not the adjusted budget, the requested budget, and not, I'm sorry, by using the approved budget and not the and not the adjusted budget for this analysis, for these purposes. It really is a better indication of the preferences expressed by the board last year compared to the preferences expressed by the board if we were to adopt this budget this year, right? And it gives us a more accurate number in the H column as to what those changes would represent.
Yeah, I just think, as a working document, we do look at revised a lot internally, just because there are line item transfers that happen throughout the year that are approved. So technically the original budget is modified. But when we're looking at budget year over year,
Yeah.
I historically, and for the last 10 years since I've been here, we've done it based on original budget. So I apologize that we didn't start with this back in early December with the finance committee, but this is what is in your document. And this is what, all of the questions that you need answers on should be based on this document. And then I also shared last week the schedule of the comprehensive budget that showed it pretty much by object, by salaries, benefits, tuition, all of that on the main, and I'm sorry, maybe I make it too confusing, but on the main page, it is based on approved budget, but on the backup pages, it's based on adjusted budget. So really it's a matter of, presentation, but the main page on that other document, as well as this document, is based on the approved budget, because in the end, this is what was approved last year, and this is what will be going to the voters in this upcoming year.
Thank you. I'm curious if anyone has any questions or takes any issue with the math coaches. I would urge folks, especially after that comprehensive presentation we had last week, and in consideration of, and many of the newer board members may not know this, but about 2.5 years ago, we took a ding, a substantial ding on our math performance in certain grades at certain schools. And I know that the math curriculum rewrite was coming around anyway. But, I know I was personally very impressed with the presentation and with the plans for the math curriculum rewrite process, and, the curriculum development process, and the need for the math coaches, given the enormity of what we face there. And, it's my plan to support that. And I was just wondering how others felt.
I'll speak.
Can you
I'm
hear me
sorry.
okay? Can you hear me okay or no?
Yeah, why don't we, was that Diane? Why don't we go with Diane
That's me.
first?
Okay. So I was kind of starting with the approach of look at the total budget ask, and then from that, identify the things that are required by contractual obligation. And then after that, look at the things that are being asked for. It is my opinion that we should be keeping this as low as possible because we have a huge ask from our community in February for the renewal plan. And so if you're looking at, it all comes out of one pocket, so to speak. So if you're asking them to pay for the renewal facility plan, and you're asking them for the, whether or not it gets voted in the Academy Street plan, and then you're also asking for a budget increase, I kind of want to keep this budget this year bare bones as much as possible. There are certain things, I think, in my opinion, that above the obligations I would want to support. Like for instance, the substitutes, that I don't consider that the bare bones, but I do consider that necessary. So in my opinion, I was going piece by piece. So if you're saying, do I support the math coach? Then offhand, I would say no. I think we could use one, but I could use a new boat. And I know that's not an exact, comparison, but I did see the last curriculum and student development committee meeting, and the 8th graders' math test scores were very good. I know that we've seen improvement across the board. We had this new math teaching concept plan in place, and the Gail, you can tell me the name of it because I just lost it. Thank you. So the illustrative math, and that's already being implemented. There's already been professional development with some of the teachers for that. And I know that there's a request for more, but I think that we're already, seeing that it's going to work. I fully expect it to work. I think it's a great program. And if we can hold off another year for the math coach, then that would be my preference.
Yeah. I don't know how to say this delicately, and you weren't on the board when we received notice from the state that our math was deficient significantly after the new SBAC test came out. And I know all school districts had an awful time with that. But I'm delighted that we're showing tremendous recovery from that. And that's a testament to Gail and to all of the teachers that have worked hard to get us past that. I'd just be afraid, especially when, our budgets have been averaging among the lowest in the state in terms of increases, really for 5, 6, 7 years now, and we're well below 2%. I do think that math in particular is an area that we can't afford right now to consider a luxury to pass off to next year, when that notice we got from the state education department lasts for 3 years. And if we don't pull ourselves out of it, it will last another 3 years. So, we can,
I would say that, having been on the curriculum and student development committee recently and through the pandemic, that we actually have been doing quite well in math. We suffered more in ELA in the lower grades during the pandemic, and that is being addressed, as you know, with foundations, and that's showing improvement. But the math scores were actually much better than the ELA, and it's on the way up. So I feel like, we're already addressing that, I think. And you can't, I know it's hard to compare because you're looking at grades that are moving up, so when you constantly look at the same grade, it's not the same group of students.
But
that being said, overall, we've actually, if you look at the numbers over the past couple of years, it's the ELA that was really suffering more than the math, and the math has made some great strides, I think, since when you were on the board and the time that it was flagged by the state. So correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
I think it's very difficult to look at a score on a smarter balanced assessment where the philosophy and the approach was different throughout the years to offer support or lack of support for a change of program. The program change to illustrative math has been a study over several years, conducted by the middle school and the high school teams. It has been selected upon a lot of voice and choice from our math teachers, really looking at the higher aspirations that we have for mathematical thinking, for critical thinking, and the development of problem solving, in addition to some other priorities. The illustrative math program has been fully implemented this year by grade 6, by grade 7, and by grade 8. However, not at all in pre-algebra and algebra in grade 8 and grade 9. So no training has happened in those grade levels or in those disciplines. And the training is being offered by one correct consultant, who is the only consultant that's certified for the state. So the problems with that is that sometimes we might need training and she's not available, or sometimes we don't have PD days. In addition to that, the pandemic has impacted our ability to get subs to go to training. So, I think that when we're talking about the math coach, it doesn't necessarily equate to a test score. And the support for a math coach is probably deeper and broader than that conversation alone.
Yeah, and my concern was more with it aligning with the curriculum rewrite and with getting that, I know you use a 5-year cycle. If we're down 2 math coaches compared to language arts coaches. And, I just feel like giving you an additional boost where you are in your development cycle now will help to fortify the illustrative math introduction. Is that?
Documents that I gave the board in advance is really about the research behind the effectiveness of coaching. Coaching is a longitudinal impact on improving teacher repertoire, not dependent upon a program adoption or not a program adoption. It's a commitment to every teacher that we will support them in growing their practice. So mathematics coaches do far more than just a curriculum cycle. However, because I don't have a leader for the curriculum cycle, I lean heavily on the math coaches to sit with various teachers as they make revisions around the agreements that we have on the leadership team. So they also have impact on the writing. Professional development is put in place before we write curriculum. So the new practices are incorporated into the curriculum units instead of having the old practices written into the units and then learning new practices and revising. So it is somewhat complicated. I do want to add that there's a lot of research and a lot of studies about the impact on mathematics as a discipline because of pandemic educational circumstances. So that means that it's a discipline that builds upon very concrete knowledge, and when kids are missing components of that over the course of several years, it does have a longer term impact than other disciplines.
My my position on this is I support the math coaching, and this is why. I mean, we have to look at what is the particular value and need of a coaching position in supporting instruction. When I look at the math position, we've got a district that is in transition to an entirely new practice of how to present and teach mathematics. Now, humans being humans, the ability and the consistency with people significantly changing their practice, there generally isn't a great record on that unless it gets consistent support and there is some oversight as to the fidelity of implementing these new methods and then refining and debriefing and carrying it forward. So, at this point in time, this is a critical juncture in a shift in philosophy and approach in teaching mathematics. And that's precisely where coaching is supportive. So, from my perspective, this is a real point of nexus where coaching can be very effective in shifting a district to a different approach that is very much in line with our mission and for a deeper understanding on the part of our kids. So I am in support of it.
Hi, this is Maureen. I agree with Steve, and I'm also in support of the math coach. And even prior to the pandemic, feedback that I've gotten from parents, and even as a parent myself, is that it's difficult to support our kids with the math because they are learning differently than we did. And parents were, quite frankly, desperate and looking for math tutors all the time. And it is, as was already stated, an area where we can't afford to have gaps in learning and gaps in understanding. So for all the reasons stated and what I just added, I fully support the math coaches.
I'd like to chime in as well, if I could, on this topic. Obviously, it's one near and dear to me. This is what I do for a living. I'm a literacy coach, and I have been for the last 20 plus years. I think it's really important to understand that coaches, when it says there as the line item about the new programming in grade 9, I think it's important to understand that a coach doesn't just serve that grade level or that group of teachers that teach that grade level. Coaches work collegially across the board pre-K-12. And so I think it's important to understand that they support not only implementation of curriculum, but writing of curriculum. They also, to Maureen's point, support parents in understanding about the new type of math and at PTA meetings and at other opportunities where they can interface with parents. So it's not an interventionist position, and I think it's important to be clear about that. It's a coaching position, which means that teachers are getting the support they need, whether it's in the classroom and it's embedded professional development or outside of the classroom in grade level meetings and professional learning community opportunities. I think that we cannot consider a coach in any way a luxury like a boat.
I would just like to say, first of all, other people articulated better than I did, and certainly Gail shot me down on, I got 2 strikes on my arguments, but suffice to say, she made a very strong argument for why we need a math coach at this time. And I want to stress that I respect and agree in principle with Diane's position on the overall budget. I do feel like we owe it to the town, especially when we're asking for a large expenditure on structures, to be lean in our budget. And I just feel, with respect, I think I have a slightly different view as to where we are on a 1.72% increase, which is only a 0.55% increase above our contractual roll-ups. And I do think that 1.72% offers us enough of a good faith, low increase budget that will support the referendum in February as well.
Question. It's really for you, Gail. So I know that according to the last curriculum and student development meeting in the fall of 21, it says began implementation in grade 6, grade 7 math, and grade 8 pre-algebra. And then, this year was supposed to be the continuing professional development with Lindsay Ramos from CLEF. And I know you said you're having difficulty getting her to come. And then in the
time.
Yeah, right, you're right.
Yeah.
Because she's one person.
Yeah, it's between her and it's also the release time for teachers and the availability of PD days.
Right.
So,
So then I know in one of the final slides, or whatever you call them now, frames, that in this spring there's supposed to be continued professional development at Polson and beginning it at Hand, and then this summer grade 7 pre-algebra, grade 8 algebra, and grade 9 algebra. So those things that are planned, and then implementation of grade 7 pre-algebra, grade 8 algebra, and grade 9 algebra in the fall of 22. So those things are set to go. I mean, are these contingent upon?
They're contingent upon budget approval for curriculum writing and for professional development. I can't carry through with plans without that. It's also contingent upon availability of teachers during the summer,
Right.
And their willingness to commit to whatever time they need during the summer. So we have not booked with Lindsay Ramos for summer sessions and summer training. And we haven't been able to survey our teachers to see what weeks they might come. Sometimes what we've been able to do is say for grade 6 and 7, we'll dedicate this week for training And they'll be able to come, and then the next week we'll do for 8 and 9, which is probably their more common banding. But nothing is,
Nothing is set in stone yet. It's sort of, this is what we want, but it's not necessarily scheduled yet.
yeah,
It's not, it's dependent upon us funding curriculum writing, but it's not dependent upon the coach.
it's funded, it's planned according to training and curriculum.
Okay.
That's true.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Could I just say one more thing really quickly, if it's okay? I just want to say one more thing, that coaches also, they don't necessarily, well, they don't at all, only support teachers in supporting kids who are struggling. They're not just there to support teachers in supporting our strivers. They also support students who are exceeding their grade level expectations, and those students, how they support how teachers can challenge those students as well. So when we think of coaches, we wouldn't want to think that they're just supporting one group of students in our district, but they support all students or all teachers in service of students, all students, regardless of what level they're working in.
So in other words, enrichment in addition to remediation.
Absolutely. How can we provide differentiation in a classroom full of students who fall on multiple levels? And teachers have that challenge on a daily basis, especially in every subject, but in math, some, students will be able to maybe understand certain concepts really well, and then they'll be exceed their grade level in that area, and then in other areas they might strive. And so coaches can support teachers when they've got this challenge of differentiating for all 15 to 20 students who sit in front of them, and how can we meet every child's need? And that's what coaches do.
Thank you, Kathy. Those are excellent points.
Go ahead, Maureen.
I was just agreeing with Kathy. Those were excellent points to bring up. The math coaches do support everybody, and it's reinforcement that really all of the students benefit from. So thank you.
Just had two questions, two-part question. I'm really sorry that I missed most of the curriculum meeting last time because it sounded like a great one. So the first question is a quick recap of the different math approaches that we've taken over the last 10 years. I can think of 3: Common Core, Tri-State Standards, and illustrative math. The second part of the question is, how do we measure the effectiveness of a math coach? I mean, apart from the, you can point to studies saying that they point teachers toward best practices and they leverage strategies and they, all the good points that Kathy made. But how do we measure effectiveness in real time? But so the first part is, how many approaches have we taken towards math in the last decade?
We have a total of 2 coaches that serve all of the classrooms, grades K through grade 6. We have no coaches after grade 6.
Right, but in terms of like approaches to math, we had Common Core.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing something.
Yeah, so
We won awards for Tri-Board or Tri-State, excuse me.
Tri-State was a program evaluation.
For
Yeah.
evaluation, right.
So Common Core, it was in the actual presentation that we did to curriculum committee. Common Core came out when we first wrote the math curriculum, and there was very little materials that were developed alongside of the adoption of the Common Core. So we found that textbooks would come out and say that they were Common Core aligned. But when we compared the old one to the new one, the strategies were almost identical. The content was very similar. So the instructional approaches really didn't reflect the things that the Common Core was trying to do, which was to deepen mathematical thinking, to elevate practice for kids, to have them have a better conceptual understanding of mathematics. So we had part of our district was able to adopt the Bridges materials. Bridges went from K through 5. We found great strategies to go with Bridges. We found a lot of strong indications that our elementary students were really getting terrific in multiple ways to solve problems, and they were showing us that through demonstrations. Our coaches were entirely focused on the implementation of those strategies and working with those teachers to make sure that they fully implemented that program, and that took many, many years. When we realized that Bridges dropped off at grade 5, the material wasn't there for grade 6. There was no programming that was adopted, and we were grabbing from some state resources and from some various other places. We really wanted to push our coaching to go into grade 6 where Bridges dropped off, to make sure that we could start seeing or helping grade 6 teachers to know what kids were actually coming to the door with and how it was different. Unfortunately, that stretches our 2 coaches beyond capacity. So when you talk about measuring the effectiveness of coaching goes down with the many different roles that they're taking, and also getting away from true coaching cycles. And we have a document that actually describes what a coaching cycle is and what it should be. But when they're asked to do all of the things that they've been asked to do, their effectiveness does go down, and you don't see the impact in the classroom. So, the Tri-State Consortium came in to do a K through 12 program evaluation. That was a collection across the district, and about 30 people came in from the Tri-State area to take a look at our mathematics program against our portrait of a graduate work and the way that we wanted critical thinking to come forth and all of the problem solving and the communication. They made some very strong recommendations that we tried to put in place with what we currently had. And that was part of the push to go into grade 6 to try to elevate some of those practices that kids were coming with. They followed up a couple of years later. We made some progress, but we continued to look at programs, and that's what brought us to illustrative.
So what did we do before Common Core?
That was before my time.
Common Core was what?
Common Core, came in. I think what we actually did was we just worked off of textbooks and textbook adoption. To my knowledge, there was no professional development, and the date of the adoption from the board for mathematics curriculum was unknown. We looked in every resource we had. There wasn't a known date for adoption. That was one of our most incomplete groups. We have an all-star math teacher. Working well into the evening. Thank you, Janet. I mean, actually, that's quite a moment when you look at the hour that it is. Janet teaches grade 6 now. Yeah.
So we only have about a half an hour left in this meeting, and I want to make sure that folks get to ask questions about. I didn't want, the math coach thing is important, but I don't want it to dominate. Diane, I don't know if you had other concerns, other line items that you wanted to explore further for discussion, or anyone else?
Was about the AP testing preparation and support. And again, in keeping with my line of thinking of keeping the budget as lean as possible, I did get some of the answers in the written answers today. So I was concerned about not really the staff interest, because we were already been told that the teachers were interested in participating in this after school and possible weekend tutoring sort of support program. But my concern was with the student utilization. I know that I have been told by others in this district and others that one of the reasons that students that take AP courses do not sit for the exam has to do with the weighted grades when you take an AP course, and then their reluctance to take the test, either because of its difficulty or that they don't want to take it, or the timing, whatever the reasoning is. they are still able to keep their good grade prior to the final exam, but they don't have to sit for the final exam, and they still get the weighted grade, and so it helps their overall GPA. And so that was something that was told to me that, prior to that, I was unaware of. And I know that we had record numbers of students during the pandemic start taking AP courses, and was a variety of reasons I was told for that, one of which was some people said it's because they could cheat. And I don't know if that pertains to our district or not, but students are very smart. However, so my question was, did we think that the students are going to really utilize this? Is it something that we want them to do, take the AP exams and do well? Is it something that they're going to really want to do because do they really want to sit for the AP exams, or do they just want that good grade prior to the exam for the weighted GPA?
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit of color, it's the College Board in general and the AP in particular really struggled during the early days of the pandemic. The experience of trying to take the AP exam online was a disaster, and I think that did a lot to discourage
Taking the exam.
students taking the exam.
So that was one of the things. And I know that now we're doing this pilot that's going to start in the third trimester. And so I guess I am curious to see how it's going to go. Will the students, it seems to me that the students that choose to take these very heavy schedules that have lots of honors and AP courses in them, they are the same, students that really strive to do their best. And they also happen to be, a lot of them, athletes in multiple sports. So I know that their time, their schedules are packed. So I guess I'm questioning, are they going to utilize this if it's after school? Is it going to interfere with sports or clubs or other activities that they already have a full schedule in? And are they going to be willing to give up that precious Saturday time for it as well? I'm just, not really sure of how much utilization there will be. So the numbers were encouraging from what I see here, but, I guess it remains to be seen what happens, right? The student may start and then decide, no, I have too much on my plate, or for whatever, a variety of reasons, may decide not to participate. So I kind of feel like perhaps, we should see how the pilot goes before, throwing money into the program and saying, yes, we're going to fund this, without really knowing the utilization, how much is wanted on the student side, not necessarily on the teacher side.
I would agree with you on that, Diane. I think that, having had a student at Daniel Hand take AP classes, I think that, they deserve, it is much harder. They deserve the boost in their GPA if they do well in that class. It's stressful and it's very hard. And, my daughter was the most recent graduate at Daniel Hand, took a few classes, and, at one point she decided not to take the exam just because it was too much at the end of her senior year and it was too stressful. And I think a lot of kids opt to not take it because of that. I really wish she had at least given it a go, because it's an incredible benefit to the parents if they do well on that exam. But I think if we're going to be mindful and we need to cut somewhere, that would be a place, because when I'm thinking about that versus like the math coach, if like my student, I'm talking from a parent standpoint right now, but if my student really wanted to take the AP exam and needed additional prep, I feel like that would be a choice to get a tutor for. Whereas when we were talking about the math before, and I've got math tutors for my children, and I know a lot of people do, it's very different. You can't have a gap in your math learning and your math understanding. And even as Kathy pointed out, the students that do very well need that additional enforcement and enrichment. So I think, just in my mind, because it came up one after another, I'm comparing the two. And I feel personally that math is critical. I think that the testing prep, maybe we should take a deeper look at that, as you had suggested.
I'd also like
My position on it is a little bit different. I have concerns about the AP plan, but for other reasons. Um, Preparation for AP and taking AP classes is often, an instructional model that is a mile wide and an inch deep. And it is, essentially teaching to the test. So it is basically cramming lots of information over a relatively short period of time. And it's a model of learning that is not in keeping, in my opinion, with our mission and with 21st century learning. Now, I understand it's widely popular across the country, although increasingly school districts are moving away from it. This test preparation plan, part of the goal is to increase the number of students that take AP classes and the number that take tests. And I think, we should think carefully about this direction. What it really means for many students is we currently have 30% of the kids at Daniel Hand taking AP classes. Some are taking multiple classes. That begins to really shape the nature of what their learning is like in their high school experience. This is a long discussion, and it's one I think the board needs to have, and we need to have with the administration in the school, because it's really embedded in a philosophy of learning and how we approach that experience. But I know that high school kids are under tremendous stress. AP classes, creates a great deal more. And, that would be fine if it really delivered what it pretends to deliver. But as you dig deeper and look at that, it rarely holds up. And I think it has diminished utility. It's a much deeper discussion, but in line with our efforts always to look at our mission and the kind of graduate we're trying to produce, I am convinced, and have been for some time, that the fundamental nature of AP classes is working against that much of the time. And, that's my position on it.
Galen, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, not to put words in the administration's mouth, I think the preference would be for more students to take fewer AP courses, because it's a very different experience if you take 5 AP courses in a year versus 1 or 2. And that might actually increase the participation in exams, because the kids will have more time, they won't have to cram as much and be less stressed, et cetera. But that's not getting to the depth of the discussion that Steve, bringing up.
Yeah, if I could jump in there too, thank you, Galen, for bringing up that point. That I just wanted to clarify that really what we're looking to do is have that student, or that's on the cusp, but that's thinking about AP but not sure how that would go to take that class. I think a student that signs up for 5 AP courses at the beginning of the year is not planning on taking 5 tests. I think I would certainly admit to that. But I think that as we look at encouraging students to take a college level course, this is instruction curriculum that they're going to see, a couple of years down the road when they're in college, that have that experience as they go forward, I think is valuable for them. The one thing I would say is, you're talking about a pilot. I'd hate to see a gap in between. If you want to see how the pilot delivers, I would ask that you fund this in some level that we can expand the pilot for the following year. So maybe we have a multi-year approach of trying to put this in place. Because I think if we just have a pilot, we're going to have a little bit of data, and we're going to see, but we're not going to have enough data to say a year from now. I don't see that being supported by just on that. I'd like to see it maybe expanded over a couple of years.
So I have a question regarding the Daniel Hand Advisory Co-Coordinators. They asked for the $14,140. I know it said there's a mention of the NEASC accreditation standards. So my question is this something that is required by NEASC, or is it something that maybe they don't require it outright? but they are like strongly suggesting and encouraging that you have it, that sort of thing. That's my question. Let's answer that.
Mr. Bodnar is online, I believe. Wendy, if you could promote him to help us answer that question. I believe it is recommends, that is one of the things they will review and give us feedback on of where that stands. I think this is also a big piece of our social emotional work with students as well. And this would, I think, make that richer within the building. And I think for high school students to be excited about these things and be ready to and really engage, it has to be, it has to be changing. It has to be really tailored for Daniel Hand High School. We can't just pull something off the shelf and have that work for our high school students. So that's where, this would be something that's agile and flexible and can be changed throughout the year. But it's I know Brian Butler, assistant principal at the high school, was ready to speak to that tonight.
Hi, Craig. Yes, we are expected to have an advisory program. It is an expectation of our NEASC accreditation process, and it's something that we have struggled to successfully implement over the years. We presently have had 2 teachers that were working on their administrative degrees that took this on as part of their program and have done a great job working with a larger school-wide committee as well as with a group of students in developing some lessons and things that students thought were important that be worthwhile if shared with our student body. An advisory program, when implemented most effectively, is something that at times has lessons that not only vary at each grade level. So when you consider the size of our school, you consider the fact that within each grade level, we currently, in our current model, which we call PAW, we have between 20 to 24 PAW groups typically per grade. So it's a large amount of work that presently 2 teachers again have taken on, are doing really good work with, but it is such a large amount of work that one of our teachers, even after completing his 092 program, realized how big it was and is continuing to do it with our other faculty member to support that. Yeah, I mean, my feeling is there's almost nothing more important right now than socioeconomic or socio-emotional education and learning, and I think it goes hand in hand with school climate in general, because I think helping individual students to feel better in their own skin in the school environment also helps the school community to, as a matter of culture and as a matter of civility and ability for students to get along well and to do well in their learning. So, for me, $14,000 is a very minor expenditure. It's not going to, it might change the hundredths column by 0.1, on our budget, but I would absolutely support this.
Advisory programs were originally developed at the same time that student success plans were really required to be developed on the school basis. So the advisory was originally designed to give an opportunity for adults to be able to work and be able to meet and talk with students about their personal individual plan for their future, which I think is critical. When we look at our mission, every student, every child, every day, that's a commitment to a more individualized approach to how we're doing schooling. And part of that is recognizing individual students and their talents and their aspirations and being able to support and nurture that through their school experience. So I think advisement, when it's done properly, is very powerful and really critical. I would agree with earlier comments. However, as I go around the state, I see very few schools that use advisement and that advisement period well. And so some leadership and direction and guidance and oversight is absolutely critical. And at this particular time, to parrot Seth's comments, students more than ever need some individual attention and some guidance and discussion around their plan. So I enthusiastically support that position. It's necessary.
Would that be like an extra guidance counselor? Would that person work with the counseling office? Could I? No, but I'm saying, would they work in conjunction with our counseling here, or our guidance counseling office? How would that person?
Mr. Bada, could you speak to maybe how that would connect with school counseling?
Integrate, how would we integrate that person?
Well,
Or two?
the leaders of the advisory groups would be, current Daniel Hand faculty, and it would be somebody there for that students outside of their core curriculum, would have a relationship with and would develop that relationship with them over 4 years. They would stay with the teachers that they're working with for a 4-year period. Our current group that is working on this, what they are envisioning is trying to take 2 of our small groups and combining them and having a group that would be approximately, they said, between 16 to ideally 18 students with 2 faculty members. And this group would meet either weekly or twice a month. And what the purpose would be to really deliver very valuable lessons and information to students that students have found valuable over time. I'm sorry, but one of my kids yelled and got my dogs barking. My apologies. And ultimately, the intent of the program would be to, again, deliver topics to students that are important to them. For instance, the lessons that they develop, there were everything from improving the confidence of students at Daniel Hand High School to looking at coping skills and mental health awareness issues so that students have a better understanding and can also, again, identify coping skills that can help them during stressful situations. Another topic was developing respectful discourse in classrooms. And if you looked at that presentation, it was really a student awareness and acknowledgement that in these times especially, that students should feel comfortable in talking about any topic in class with their teachers and their fellow students and be respectful to one another. Another topic that students had looked at that they thought was worthwhile was revising the health curriculum to be more focused on stress management and individual well-being. So these are topics that the co-advisors right now are working with, again, faculty members, students, community members, working with Madison Youth Family Services to really deliver, very pertinent and, sensitive topics to students. And the individuals that are developing these lessons would also work with our faculty to help them develop a comfort in discussing such topics with students. And over time, that regularity of meeting with the students and delivering these lessons would, the purpose would be also to develop, again, another relationship between students and faculty members throughout our school.
Wouldn't need any special training. They would be faculty members that choose to do this.
Well, it would include all of our faculty members would be a part of this, and there would be training. There is training that these individuals have already set up for this spring to have people come in to talk with faculty members who maybe are not as comfortable talking about certain sensitive topics, and would train them in strategies and approaches that would benefit them when delivering these lessons as well as any lessons that they teach in their classrooms regularly. So it's really something that not only would benefit our students, but I think the process of implementing it to this extent would also benefit our faculty members.
Question. So if you have two people doing this and you say you can accommodate 16 students? at a time,
Ideally, right now, currently, our groups that we have in the building tend to, on average, range between 8 to 12 students, depending on the grade and the size of the grade. But ideally, our hope would be to be able to have, teachers paired up, 2 teachers paired up with approximately, they said, between 16, maybe a maximum 20 students. But to have the group small enough with 2 adults, that way should an adult, be absent, not only that, but one adult be maybe more skilled in a particular area or topic, that they could plan with each other and work with each other, and also develop a comfort in working with each other.
to all students.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on that line?
I support that line item. I think it's very important. And as you mentioned, Seth, it's not a lot of money. And thank you, Mr. Bodnar, for your feedback. I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Do another topic while we still have administration with us real quick.
Sure.
Because I know we had like the whole next meeting to talk about everything in detail amongst ourselves. I just wanted to make sure we get questions in for the people that I can't see that I'm assuming are there. So I have a question about the ask for the planned and cycle maintenance of the additional 50,000. So
Wendy, could you promote Bill?
okay.
Just a minute.
So I know that the example that was given was, the Paulson hallway, and I understand the need to fund that. What I'm questioning is the addition of $50,000 added to the budget annually every year. When we have a referendum coming up in February that is going to address some major issues at Paulson, and I understand it's not all the issues at Paulson, but the major electrical, the auditorium, the AC, that sort of thing at Paulson. And I know that we have other issues at Paulson, just regular maintenance things that we need to fund. But when we're taking out of the picture the old buildings of Ryerson and Jeffrey, hopefully, assuming that the referendum passes, the new pre-K to 5 building, and then, revamping Brown to be the other elementary school, you feel like, well, there should be a lot less money going towards those facilities for maintenance, et cetera, especially the new building. So adding an additional 50,000, I'm really thinking it's targeting and Paulson. So with the example of the Paulson hallway, we're not going to be doing the hallway every year. So I'm kind of wondering, what, I understand that there are increases every year due to inflation and the cost of products. But I know that we were also talking about the cost of building materials, et cetera, that had gone up because of the supply chain issue now, that they're sort of in flux, and some of them I know have come down. I've heard from other people, and some are not expected to come down. So, it's kind of hard, I know, to predict what things are going to cost, and I know everything increases over time, a certain percentage. But I guess I'm just very hesitant about an additional 50,000 every single year. I know you haven't asked for an increase in a few years, but at the same time, with buildings kind of coming offline or getting revamped to the referendum, again, assuming it passes, then I'm just concerned about the amount here. And so if you could speak to, the things that need to be done, because I know that the large things are really part of the CIP. Like I know Daniel Hand obviously has a big HVAC issue, but that's going to be a CIP. So if you could just speak to the 50,000, I would appreciate it.
I'd be happy to. Is it my turn? So Thank you for letting me speak about facilities. I definitely like to talk about facilities and happy to get into the details. Specifically at Polson, I could talk about any one of the schools that, you know, we plan on keeping online: Polson, Brown, and the high school. The first section of Polson, the main hallway that I propose to do this summer, is the first of many. The hallways at Polson are very, very long, and there's a lot. I picked the easiest one because I thought that would be the simplest, and some of the reasons are the flooring underneath. And this was going to be the beginning of what I considered a 4 to 5 year, maybe even longer, plan to increase the lighting, increase the flooring in the walls to make the building a little more bright and airy. If you go into Polson, you can sort of see the hallways are long and sort of dark. So I'm getting into the specifics about Polson, and the 50,000 I could use significantly more just to address the Polson issues. The high school itself, you know, we went online in 2003 just to keep up with the painting and carpet and lighting is a significant amount of funding that we could use. Brown School, we put in a lot of money over the years to make Brown School 100% heating and air conditioning, excluding the gym, and to keep and maintain these buildings that have much more sophisticated equipment, and repair them and plan on cycled maintenance that, you know, it's not broken, but we know that if we don't plan on replacing it, we don't want it to fail. So I guess I want to explain as well, when I first got involved in this in the late 90s, when we did our first facilities analysis, the number was $800,000 is what we should have planned for every year. And of course we couldn't afford that, and it didn't really make sense. We couldn't, you know, really, we don't need everything working perfectly. So we made a number. I think the first number was 100,000. So every year we put in 100,000. Now we're up to, you know, almost 400,000. The buildings are more sophisticated, they're more complicated, and they need much more maintenance and planning for significant items. In the lighting, the flooring, you know, we do stay on it, and I think that we do a very good job. These are maintenance items that you can plan. You could always put them off. You don't have to paint. You don't have to replace the carpet. The lighting's working. We could just fix it and make it work. It's the enhancement. It's to make it the next step. It makes it a little better. It makes the building, the appearance, and you walk in the building and you're like proud that, you know, this is a school that, you know, that you're proud of. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. These are things that you do not have to do this year. You probably could even get away with it for next 2 or 3 years. It's the things that you want to plan. And the more money you put into the plan and cycle maintenance, the more you don't have to fix those, you know, breaks that, you know, that now you have to move kids out of a classroom, or you can't use part of the building for 2 months because, you know, we can't get the part. You know, those are the reasons that you want to put the money into plan and cycle maintenance. And I get it. You know, is it more important to fix and have the building look a little nicer than have a math coach? You know, I guess I would say the math coach, you know, and put the money into that, because I can always fix and maintain the building. It's the appearance and long-term maintenance. Sorry.
Bill, can I ask, would it be fair to characterize this $50,000 almost as an undesignated, like discretionary fund for the facilities director if something happens or maybe needs a little bit more here or there, rather than having a specific line itemization attached to it?
Well, and honestly, that's what the money is. I every year meet with every principal and I say, okay, what are your priorities for your school? You know, I don't judge what is important to them. I just say, this is what I have for funding. What can I do to make your school better? And in the plan and cycle maintenance, whether it's, a section of the school that, it seems to be not liked by most of the staff, or they're doing something particular in a program, and if I can enhance this area. So yes, it's discretionary with the input from the superintendent, all the administrators, on what makes the school better, and whatever makes Polson better might have nothing to do with hand. I know what the facility needs are, and with that and the input of the school needs that the staff and the administrators know, then I can target what they're doing. For example, we're doing the front entries of Polson and Brown. So I'm taking the planned and cycled maintenance and trying to enhance, when we're going to tear up their offices and we're going to tear up the front entry, let's see if we can put more money into the front appearance. Let's see if we can make the office a little nicer, because we're not going to come tear it apart again. And that's what we do. We work together to make the buildings better. And the $50,000 is not going to make or break it. It's just going to keep enhancing the buildings and let me maintain the buildings in a better way. And it's a significant amount of money, but relative to the size and the amount of buildings we have, I want to say I could always use a significantly amount more. It's not it's not a trivial amount, but it could maybe paint and carpet 5 classrooms.
We get some clarification on any possible overlap between planned cycle maintenance and CIP. I mean, part of the concern might be that we're either double counting or putting money into things that will be either not necessary later on or will be covered later on.
Yeah, great question. A great question. And the key is that the planned and cycled maintenance is that it's planned, mostly on carpet replacement, lighting, small projects to improve the buildings, where the CIP is an actual project. It's a capital project that targets a specific thing. So I don't know if that clarifies it. It's an actual project. It's a front entry. It's the lighting in the in the cafeteria. It's the sound system in the cafeteria at the high school. It's a specific project that's $100,000 that would wipe out the planned and cycle maintenance. And when I know that I'm doing something in an area for a CIP project, I would then utilize some of the planned and cycle maintenance money to enhance that same area. For if I'm redoing the lighting, well, I'm probably going to paint that room, and I'm probably going to redo some flooring too, so that not only does the lighting make the building better, then the carpet and the flooring. So it works together. And the bottom line is, one's a specific project that's usually in the 50 to 100,000 or more, and the planned and cycled, could be $2,000, and it could be also 20,000, depending on how you break it down.
With new schools, you'd think that maintenance needs would be lower the first couple of years, but is that true?
So I've been here for the new high school, 2003, seems pretty new to me, and some renovations. And what happens is you make a brand new school. It's much more sophisticated. The heating and ventilation is much more sophisticated. The needs of the school are much more important. So yes, you don't have as many breaks, and the maintenance for replacing painting, carpet, lighting, all those things are less, but not the intensity to keep it up and take care of it. And what doesn't matter when you do a new school, there's going to be some things that get left out, and it all falls on maintenance, where we can fix and maintain it, or we can modify it a minor change. We will have, on all new schools and all our buildings, we will have maintenance and repairs and things that we need to do to address the specific needs of the school. It just happens.
You just have to go back to.
Does anyone else have a specific question on this while we have Bill, or any other questions for any of the administrative support staff that are here? Because I would like to move on to our other meeting where we can discuss some of this stuff in more detail. But Emily, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, speaking from the facilities committee, I really appreciate everything that Bill does, and if anyone can make a dollar go far, it's Bill. Being very responsible with an extraordinarily lean budget. I was surprised that there wasn't more of an ask in this, so he works miracles and magic over there. So I'm fully in support of that from the facilities, from my experience in the facilities committee in particular. That's it for me.
So thank you, and I'm very happy to, work for the town and the school. I couldn't be prouder, and I believe that we fund it appropriately, but there's never enough for facilities. It's just, you could always do more, and you want to do more because you want the learning experience of the kids are in the building, and it has to be acceptable to them if they can't learn because this heat doesn't work or it doesn't look nice and there's no light and the ventilation isn't working. That we spent a lot of money on that.
All right, moving on to other, Bill, thank you very much.
No,
Moving on
thank
to
you.
any other, yeah, thanks. Any other
I just wanted
lines
to
you
say
wanna
thank
discuss
you.
while we have folks? I'm sorry, Maureen.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say thank you, Bill, and I agree with Emily. You do a phenomenal job, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Happy to do it. Proud to be working for the schools.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Diane, did you have any other of the lines that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, no, I do. So I just have a question regarding the curriculum department lead stipend. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So I know that we have to start writing our curriculum again. And so the PE and the health and the music are up. So these stipends, are these paid like, so my understanding is that you choose a teacher to write the curriculum. And so the stipend pays that teacher who's writing curriculum, and then we have to get a sub to teach the class that they're not teaching because they're writing curriculum. Is that correct?
Somewhat. So,
Oversimplification, I guess.
so the curricular leads are just in disciplines that have never written curriculum before. So those are only dedicated to those areas where the teachers aren't trained yet in curriculum writing. We don't know what a unit is. They have never developed in the system that we've used to the detail of curriculum writing. So there's a lot of discussion around the table that happens vertically and across the team about common assessments, what those are going to look like, what the outcomes are going to be for the students K through 12. So what we do is we post the position. It's a posted position, and it has certain qualifications that individuals apply for that position. They're vetted and selected for that position. They are typically replaced in the classroom for the period of the cycle. So for a music position, that's projected to be a 1-year writing cycle. So that candidate would come out of the classroom for the period of a year. And they would,
the whole year they don't teach.
They do not teach for that year.
So then, but they still get their salary plus the stipend, or it's the stipend?
No, it's just to cover the differential between the time that they're a coordinator or doing some other role, to make sure that the classrooms are covered. So usually it's a coordinator who teaches a 0.6 and has a 0.4, that's coordination and evaluation.
Okay.
The administrators take on the evaluation role for that period of time, so that person can be dedicated for that cycle. So it's usually a 0.6 teaching that's covered by that.
And so, and this happens during the school year, they don't curriculum write over the summer?
They do it in the summer as well.
Or they do, so it covers that as well, it's not additional.
Right, but they work collectively with groups of people. They don't work by themselves. So they don't write curriculum and hand them to teachers. They work with different teams of teachers throughout the system. After that.
It did help. It's still a little, it's not my area. Not a real house, if that's what I'm saying. Okay, but that answers my questions. Yes, thank you.
Sure.
And does anyone have any other questions? I feel like I'm just asking all the questions. I just wanted to know what happens if we don't fund tuition typicals.
The winning that is worked over at TCLC, and it's kind of like if you decided not to fund the losses we have in food services.
I wanted to understand that, because I understand what it's for.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand like what happens if you don't.
Right.
Can you explain that a little bit better?
Okay.
So we charge tuition for students to come into TCLC that aren't there as special ed students. And so the last few years, we have not had as many students come in and not receiving as much tuition. And that's expected for next year too. So we would have a hole in the budget. So I think in our efforts to responsibly budget going forward, we want to make sure we bring everything to the board's attention.
So is there anything that I'm assuming it's less enrollment due to pandemic is my assumption. And considering the fact that we're having like more people moving into town, et cetera, would it be from a lower number of students? So
and also more special ed students in.
okay, so we're looking for the balance then. So
There's an obligation to have a balance.
Okay.
To have typicals with fund.
Did not know that, thank you. So I guess I'm wondering, what our approach is to sort of increase our number of typicals in the preschool. Like, I get the whole pandemic thing, but if we are being optimistic that we are approaching the end of this predicament, then I would imagine that we would see the numbers come back up again.
Yeah, I think we will. I think it's just going to take a few years. I think, I don't think, right now is when families are planning. We're not really able to say what September will look like. I have in my head what I hope and think it's going to look like, but that's we're not able to plan. So I think I would hope maybe a year out from now we're able to kind of put this back in, and save the money there.
Okay.
I would also add that I think the landscape has changed for early childhood intervention. The birth to 3 child find process has been disrupted because providers aren't going in homes. So I think that's going to have an impact on the balance of typical and special education.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just a clarifying point for me. So conceivably then, if we see an increase in our typical students, then we would see a reduction in the $30,000 budget in the future, in future years. Okay.
Yes.
Although I guess the proviso would be, right now we have a non-standard TCLC program that we're very proud of, and we should be, but one wonders how that will be impacted if the state or the federal government or both move forward with mandatory preschool, and what that would do to the program and all. But that's not a question for this budget coming up, because that's not the case. But there's not going to be any change. But it's just a thought to plant, thinking forward to future budgets. So any other questions on any of the other lines, or while we have administrators?
Can Stacy come to our next meeting just for like the first 10 minutes? If we're really, really nice.
So I was gonna jump in there and thank you, Diane, for bringing that up. So I'm not planning on having the other administrators online. I think you've gone through the questions. It sounds like for my principals, and but it sounds like Stacy's invited back, and she excitedly agreed. But if anything comes up, that you think of, please write to me, and I will share that with administration from the schools ahead of time and get you an answer in writing. Like I said, that goes for any question, if you know, but I know we'll have more discussion. This will be on the agenda for the 18th.
Okay. Thank you, everyone who I can't see that came.
Thank you.
Administration, I don't see you, but I know you're there.
Yes, thank you all. This has been very helpful. So can I just ask as a matter of procedure, this is a workshop and not a regular meeting. I think we're allowed to vote at special meetings to either add to or change and amend an agenda. Just not at emergency meetings. Emergency meetings under FOIA, I think, require a very specific set agenda that you can't change, but I think at a special meeting, we can vote to change the agenda. And what I'm getting at is what I started with, which is I think we owe ourselves the opportunity to workshop as a board some of these issues that were raised and some of the answers, questions and answers that the questions and the answers that we received before we vote as a board on the budget document. So it would be my preference for us to move and to vote on tabling the actual action on the proposed budget until the business meeting on the 18th. Do I have any advice from Craig?
Yeah, if I could jump in. Special meetings you can not add, but that is on the agenda, so you can table it.
Okay.
Emergency meetings are that you don't have to post for 24 hours ahead of time. That's the two differences, but this being a budget workshop, we posted the agenda. You can't add to it, but it is on there, so you can either leave it be and adjourn, or you can table it.
Can I make a motion to table the vote on the budget until the next business meeting?
And I second it.
Maureen seconded.
You couldn't wait to get a second.
I just can't get it.
I'm sorry. So who seconded? I'm having trouble here.
Here's me. Sit next to him.
It was Mary Ann.
It was Mary Ann.
It was Mary Ann. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Move the table and Mary Ann seconded. All right, so I'm going to bring it to a vote now, and we're all going to have to actually raise our hands and sweep around the room so I can see. All in favor of tabling our actual vote on the proposed budget until our January 18th meeting. Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
So, Craig, can you report who's raising their hand in the keynote?
All four. We have
Everybody.
All right, so we have unanimity.
Diane and Mary Ann.
It's a 9-9 vote.
Okay, 9-0.
9-0.
Thank you. 9-0
And then I-
carries.
Oh, I had to leave her.
Table. Meeting. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So,
Second.
Diane,
Second.
who seconded?
Kathy.
Maureen did. Okay. And moved.
I didn't even jump in on that.
I should have said,
I know
since
what I'm
Maureen
holding.
did it, I should have said Mary Ann.
Yeah. Sure, why not?
All right, all in favor of adjourning, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, nay. Any abstentions? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
We're all.
Night, everybody.
You guys all feel better.
Yep,
Understand,
bye-bye.
right? They're coming back.